Hello and welcome to erpwebtutor.com. This is Arideep, and in this presentation we will discuss about the Enhanced Retropay in Oracle Payroll. Now previously in the videos we have discussed about the concepts of Retropay, and we have also shown you how the Retropay by Element is done. Now in this video we will talk about the other way of doing a Retropay, which is the Enhanced Retropay. Now the first thing that we need to understand before we talk about Enhanced Retropay is that why it is called Enhanced. Now, Enhanced Retropay has been built on top of the Retropay by Element solution to produce a data-driven mechanism that allows greater granularity of results. Now, it might sound a little complicated, but as we move through the next few slides and as we process, we show you the live processing of what is happening, then it will make it, this whole statement will become a lot clearer. So let's move on. So let's try to understand that, whatever that complicated one-liner says, let's try to simplify that now. Now, the first advantage of having Enhanced Retropay is the first feature that it takes care of is a correction versus a backdated change. Now, a distinction has now been made between a corrective change versus a deliberate backdated change. Now, these types of change may require different results being produced depending on the statutory rules. Now, let me talk a little bit about what a corrective change is and what a deliberate backdated change is. Now, just imagine a situation where somebody is given a salary in the system, and for some reason that has been entered in the system incorrectly. Now, once the payroll runs, the person receives paycheck and realizes that the salary has been entered incorrectly. So now what the HR will do, so either HR or payroll the manager would go into the system and will actually correct the entry that has been made for that employee. So that is a corrective change. So you are actually correcting an entry which was put into the system incorrectly. Now compare that with a deliberate backdated change. Now a deliberate backdated change is something, if we can imagine the example that I mentioned when I talked about the Retropay, the introduction, that let's say we have Sam whose pay has been increased retroactively. So today is, say, whatever, the December 2nd. Now Sam has been chasing his supervisor for a salary hike, and after months and then after some procedural delays, he finally gets his raise retroactively. Let's say, we can say that sometime his raise should have been effective from October, but due to certain complications that could not happen, and now he is getting that raise, and as per his request, he is getting that raise effective sometime in October. Now, what has happened since October? Now, there's already been payroll run, and now you're trying to retroactively correct somebody's salary. So that is a deliberate backdated change. So you go into the past date and make a change. So depending on that, like I said, so depending on the two different scenarios, it might require different way of calculating the results. So for example, the corrections may be taxed in the original earning period because that was incorrectly entered. So he should have been taxed. So now he gets the salary increase. Now with that increased salary comes increased taxes. Now the taxes has to be reported in the correct earning period. So you might have to fix the taxes for reporting purpose, for all the different standard reports that you have, even for tax filing purpose, for accounting purpose. Those corrections, the taxes that resulted because of the corrections has to be in the original earning period. Compare that with the backdated deliberate change, which the increased amount is actually earned in the current pay period. So the taxes is in the period in which they are paid. So this enhanced Retropay solution will address this. Okay, now the benefits of Enhanced Retropay. So significant performance improvements. Now let's explain why. Now the recalculation period is determined at the assignment level. Now previously the Retropay process was governed by a single start and end date. So if you remember the practice that we did for Retropay by Element, so when we are running this Retropay by Element process, we were entering a start date and an end date. So it was trying to process everything between that start and end date. So for, let's say you make a change, somebody's change was effective in October, somebody's change was effective in August. So you have to put a start date sometime in August, so it covers the first employee whose change was made in August. And then let's say you put your end date as today so that it can process for both the employees. Now what it would do before, it would process employee B whose change is, say, effective in October starting from August. So those are unnecessary calculations which were happening. So we will see the example. So assignment X needed to be recalculated from September 1st and assignment B from October 1st. So using Retropay by Element, you have to enter the start date of September 1st, and let's say you're on today's date, you will put the end date of today. So both the assignments will be calculated from September 1st. Now to be more efficient, each assignment should only be recalculated for the period that it is required. So in this example, your assignment X should be calculated from September 1st, and your assignment B should be calculated from October 1st. Now with the Enhanced Retropay, the concept of retro assignment has now been introduced. So providing an individual start date for each assignment. Now, so the unnecessary recalculation of periods prior to a change has now been eliminated. This is exactly reiterating what I just mentioned. Okay, so we will see all those steps in how it's happening. Now, what are the steps that needs to be performed for the Retropay to work? So the first thing is you make the retrospective changes as required, and then you run the retro notifications report and the enhanced version of it. Then navigate to the View Retropay Status window and make sure that the retro assignments and corresponding entries are created properly. So the next step is change the individual entries where the recalculation reason is different from default, which is something which is not done, which is not an usual practice. You would not do this frequently. So the last step is run the Retropay enhanced process and verify the element entries created. So these are the steps that you would do as a practice when you do the Retropay process. So these are not the setup steps, but these are the actual transaction steps, the processing steps. So what happens in the background now? Now, if the dynamic triggers and event group functionality is working correctly, the table pay process events will be updated. So once you make the changes and you run the retro notifications report, what you will see, you will be able to see the employees which are going to be processed. But the moment you make a change in somebody's salary, an event is detected. And how is it detected? It is detected by the dynamic triggers that I mentioned here. And then the event group is actually grouping those triggers on certain tables. Now, which tables those are? The tables that are being considered for the trigger actions are the pay element entries F. So you make a salary change, you make somebody's allowance change retroactively. So what are going to change? You're going to have, depending on, so if you do a correction, the pay element entry values F, the screen entry value is going to change. If you do a deliberate backdated change, it will end date the previous pay element entries with the old the value, which is again stored in the pay element entry values F, and then it will create a new line in the pay element entries F with the appropriate effective date. So these two tables are being used, and the triggers are on these two tables. So that's how Oracle or the system in the background will look for changes. Now, the retro notifications report look for changes in the events that are being monitored. So it's monitored continuously by the triggers. If you make changes, the pay process events the data gets populated with the event. It detects the event and an entry is made. Now, an entry is also made on the pay retro assignments. So now the concept of retro assignment is coming into picture. It will tell the payroll process or the Retropay process that what are the retro assignments, what is the retro entry. So the two tables that we are considering here are the pay retro assignments and the pay retro entries table. Okay, so what is happening next? When the Retropay enhanced, the Retropay process, when it runs, it will process all the entries in the pay retro assignments, and it also has, so once you actually practice, so once you do this, I will show you the setups, and then once all the setups are there, what you can do is you can make a backdated salary change for an individual, and then you can go ahead and check the data in these two tables, pay retro assignments and pay retro entries. And then so it will look, so when the Retropay process is happening, it is going to look into those two tables. It sees the information sitting in those two tables, and it will create the necessary element entries for the assignments. Now the effective date, the parameter on the Retropay concurrent request indicates the pay period that the element entries will be created in. So that is a parameter on the concurrent program. Now, the following is a suggested minimum list of triggers to enable for the retro notification report. Now, again, I'm going to show you these, but keep in mind that these are the two tables that we mentioned, the pay element entry values F and pay element entries F, and what are the triggering action. So just think in terms of just trying to visualize what is happening when you're trying to do a retroactive change. So like I said, either it updates something on the pay element entries F table, either it inserts something, or if you delete somebody's change, it was incorrectly entered, somebody's salary increase, it is going to delete something from the pay element entries F table. And then the pay element entry values F table, we're looking at an update that is happening depending on what kind of transaction it is. So we had enough of slides presentations. We had enough knowledge now to identify what we are trying to see. So the next thing that we will do is we will go into the application and we will look at the setups that has been done. Now, just to keep in mind that this is the setups are already there. So we will just go through each and every setup and we will clearly explain what has been done, and then we will actually run the Retropay enhanced and we will see the different processing steps. So let's go to the application now. So here we are. So we are on our demo US Super HRMS Manager responsibility, depending on whatever configuration responsibility you are using. Just go to that payroll configuration responsibility, and a couple of things that we need to look at before we even discuss the processing steps. So these are the setup steps that has been done. Now, the first thing that I want to show you is I need to go to the other definitions, the two things that I mentioned, that during the slide, the presentation, we talked about the dynamic triggers working, the functionality working correctly, and I said that the event group is working correctly. So in order to make sure, what we will do is we will go to, under your HRMS Manager responsibility, go to other definitions and then go to dynamic triggers. So this is the dynamic trigger. So now in the dynamic trigger, I need to look for the two tables that I had mentioned, the pay element entry values F and pay element entries F. So let me search. This is my search, like as you can see, that the find triggers. So I'm going to find the trigger on this table, pay element entries F. And I said I need to make sure that all the insert, update, and delete triggers are present. Now this is a find screen, and also my application is payroll. Now this setup is actually, for the US legislation and for most countries, these triggers are already created in the system. So it's very unlikely that you will have to create it from scratch, because these comes with the installation. So at the most, what you need to do is just go and find them. You should definitely be able to find the triggers. For some reason, if you have issues, or also if you're doing it for the first time, what you might want to do is you might want to make sure that the trigger is generated and enabled. For some reason, if it's the first, your Retropay Enhanced Retropay process is not working correctly, what you can do is you can uncheck the generated, just like I did here, save it, and then regenerate the trigger. So this will actually, you will see the message when I try to save it. So all the consequence generations, if anything is stuck, it will regenerate everything. So that's it. That's all you need to do. So most likely they will all be generated and enabled. But if for some reason, if you're encountering any issues with everything, all the setups are done correctly, and you're still not able to create the element entries, or for some reason your the pay process events table is not getting populated with the appropriate information, this is the first thing that you would check. So make sure that for some reason it's not enabled, or this generated, or any of these checkbox got unchecked. So make sure you regenerate and enable the triggers. So this is the insert. I'm sure they should have the delete, and then we should find one with update. So we have all the three. Excellent. So now let me search for the other table. So pay element entry values F, and for that I just need to see the update. Okay, but I'm pretty sure they will all be there. Okay, it's there. Excellent. Same thing, make sure that it's generated and enabled. If not, just go ahead and check these and save your data. So this is the first step that was mentioned in the presentation, and like I said, this is just to make sure, you need to go through the screen to make sure that these are generated, because these usually come with the installation. You don't need to create these. The next thing that we need to do is we need to go to something called the event group. So I have my defined event group. It's under the same navigation path, other definitions, define event group. Okay, this is a date tracked screen, and I'm going to search for my event group that I have created. It's called the demo retro event group. So just name the event group based on your company's initials, and then if possible, use the word retro to make it clear that this event group is for the Retropay. And the event group type is always retro, and you can leave the proration. The proration is grayed out because it's applicable for proration. The time definition, you can leave it blank. Now these are some of the date tracked events that you need to make sure that they are added to your event group. Now, like I said, let me first look for my pay element entries F table. So let me search for the pay element entries F table. Now I have the update So the update is on the effective end date and the start date. So I have two records for update, one for end and one for start. Now for insert, I have one record for the insert. For end, I have one record for end and one for delete. So it's basically, you can have an insert, update, and delete, and sometimes you want to end date. So all of these date tracked events are tracked for this particular table. Now let me search for the other table and pay element entry values F. So let's query for that. It's very simple. You can have an update or a correction, and the column, the value that is getting impacted is the screen entry value, which actually stores the value for that element, the amount or whatever. So I have these two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this, all the different, so now let me run the while query. And so I'm going to post these, all the different update types, the table and the column names on our website. So if you're trying to practice this, you don't have to remember or just go through these videos multiple times. You can just copy it from the website and use it. So this is my second configuration step. So I mentioned that I verified that the dynamic triggers are enabled. I created an event group with the type retro and made sure the different update types on the date track events on the two tables are set up properly. So once that is done, my next step for configuration is I need to make sure that there's something called the incident register, and the navigation path is again other definitions and functional areas. So let's wait for that form to open. So here you don't really need to add anything, just query, and you will find that there's something called the incident register. That's the functional area. So under the incident register, you should be seeing all so it has different tabs in the details section. So on the trigger, make sure your pay element entries F, all those triggers are added to this incident register. So again, this should come with the installation. You don't have to do anything for this. The other thing that sometimes you need to do is you need to go to the legislation and make sure that you add your country, the legislation country that you're using under the legislation tab. So that's all you need to do. So I have added United States. For the business group, you don't need to worry about it. If you don't see your business group by any reason, by default it should have all the business groups. As you can see, it has something called all business groups, so it should cover. So you don't have to do anything. So the only thing that you need to do is you need to go to your, select the incident register, go to the legislation tab and add your legislation in here. That's all. Okay? Excellent. So now let's move on to the next step, which is the element which is going to store this Retropay amount, right? So you have, let's say, for example, you are giving a retroactive salary change. Now, previously during the Retropay by element, what we saw, and that was one of the limitations, that when I was doing a Retropay by element, it was creating multiple element entry in the current pay period. Now for salary, it was creating, let's say there were two payroll cycles where the salary had to be recalculated. So it was, besides the original one from that particular pay period, it was also creating two entries for the salary element. So when I'm running the quick pay, I can see that. So it was summing up the whole component, the salary element component. So it was kind of misleading because it does not tell you that how much it is for your regular salary and how much is the retro component. Now with the enhanced Retropay, so what we can do is we can have a separate container or a bucket where I can say, okay, this much is your basic salary, of course the new rate, and now this is the retro component which you are being paid off from the past pay periods. So in order to hold that extra amount of money that is being paid retroactively, what we are doing is we are creating a separate bucket. Now what is a bucket in terms of payroll run? So everything is a container. Every container that is a part of payroll is an element. So of course we need to do an element creation. Now let me open the element that I created. So again, what I did, I went to total compensation, and since I'm using the US legislation, I always prefer to use create elements from my earnings screen so that I don't have to worry about creating the balances, all the dimensions, all those things. I don't have to create them manually. So automatically, so all of those gets created automatically. So let me just open the earnings screen and just quickly query for the element that I had created. Okay, and I have named it as per the salary element with, I think I have prefixed with retro something. So this is my salary and this is my retro earning component. So it's the same thing, the demo biweekly salary, and I've called it retro. The key difference is that this is a non-recurring element, right? Because you don't want this element to be appearing in every pay cycle. So make sure that this is a non-recurring element, and the rest I have left default. Depending on your company's need, you can select what's the termination rule, whether it's actual termination or the final close or last standard process. So by default, when you have a non-recurring, Oracle automatically creates it as final close, but if you want to override, you can always do that. Now, the rest, everything is very simple. This is my earning, and the next thing that I did, make sure that you create the link. So I'm just not showing you that step. So hopefully by now, if you're doing this exercise, by now you already know that whenever you create an element or an earnings, in order to use it, so you have to create appropriate links. So the next thing, that the key thing is that if your original element, if you have created or added any extra input values, the retro element should have the exact same input values. Okay, so let's take a look at our salary element first. So this is my salary element. What I did, I did add an extra input value called amount. Okay, this was not a part of the input values that got created when I created the earnings. So this is an extra input value that I had created or added to this particular element. Now same thing is going to happen. So when this retro element gets created, it will not have that particular input value because that is not a required input value. And also the earnings, the element creation that happens when you use the earnings screen, it creates all the necessary inputs, but if you want a specific input, that does not get created automatically. So for the same reason, so that my retro element is a mirror image of my salary element, I had to make sure that the inputs are all the same. It has to have the same sequence. So the sequence will not be a concern because it's going to create the element in the exact same fashion. So, this will be created correctly. So, but if I had added an additional input value, I just had to manually add that. So that's what I did. So this is the extra step that I did. Now let's go back to the salary element itself. Now what did I do next here? So I went to the recalculation tab. This is where I selected my recalculation under the recalculation event, I selected my event group that I created. Okay, so this is, if you remember, I showed you that this is the demo retro event group that I had created. So I selected that, save your work, and then go to retro components. Now in here, the component is Retropay, the reprocess type is reprocess. And then if you want, you can make it the default component as well. So we can just save it. And the Retropay elements. Now this is where you're telling Oracle that for this demo biweekly salary, if there's a Retropay, that Retropay component goes to which element. Now here I'm selecting the demo biweekly salary retro, which is the retro component element, which I just showed you. So this is what is telling the system that when it creates those retro components, after it does the calculation, the component goes into this element. Okay, so that's all. So let's close this. That's all the setup that we have done so far. So let's sum it up. So we made sure that the dynamic triggers are all generated and enabled. The next thing that we did is we created an event group with the type retro and made sure that we added all the necessary triggers on the two tables, pay element entries F and pay element entry values F. Next thing what we did is we went into that functional area and made sure that our under the legislation tab for incident register, the business group or the legislation that we are using has been added. We created the retro element. We of course linked it to the right payroll, and then on the actual salary element under the recalculation tab, we used the event group, and in the retro component we specified the retro element. Okay, so those are all the setups that we have done. Now let's do the processing. So we will pick the same employee, and as you can see that our effective date is December the 3rd, so we will keep it that way. We will not change it, so let's keep it that way, and we will query for Sam Jones. We will go to assignment and we will go to his salary. And here we will add a new salary. So what we are doing is we are retroactively correcting his salary. Okay, so let's say that he is getting a salary increase, say from October 14th, I wanted to say. Okay, so he's getting a salary increase from retroactively from October 14th, so he needs to be paid out all the difference. Okay, it's because subsequent payroll run has already happened, so we can verify that. So now the new salary is say 2444, so he's getting a $222 increase bi-weekly, and the status is approved. Say the reason for change is merit, and let's save it. Okay, the salary is saved. Now let's make sure that all the payroll runs are completed, so we can go and verify that we just, for the sake of demo, what we did is we just ran the quick pay for all the pay periods. So you can see that the November 30th payroll is complete. So the next one, okay, 16 November payroll is complete. The 2nd November payroll is complete. Okay, and the 19th October payroll is complete as well. So the change has been made effective from October 14th, but all the subsequent payrolls has already been run. So what are we going to do now? Next thing, so we will now follow the processing steps. So like I said, the first thing we will do is we will run the retro notifications report. Okay, so we went to view, and we will submit a single request, which is a concurrent program. We'll submit single request. Just use the word retro and you should find. So it's called the Retro Notifications Report Enhanced PDF. It's okay. So you can select the payroll for which you want to run this. So in this case, my bi-weekly payroll. If you want to use override event group, you can select the event group that you have. And the template name, this is the template that is used for generating the report. And generate report, you can say yes or no. You can say, I'm going to say yes. Okay, yes, I want to generate a report. Okay, so let's submit. Okay, I don't want to submit any more requests, so I'll say no. And let's try to find our report. Okay, it's pending, so let's wait till it completes. Okay, so finally my report is completed. So now let's take a look at the output of this report. Okay, so here is the output of this report. I can scroll down and I can see, I have some other employees, but I don't care. So I only am concerned for now with Sam Jones, and I can see that the reprocess date for Sam is October the 14th. Okay, so he has been picked up. His record has been picked up. So at this point, what you can do is you can go into the tables that I mentioned, the pay process events, that event has been detected. You can go to the pay retro assignments table and the pay retro entries table to see what entries it's going to process. Okay, so let's close this. And next step, as we had mentioned, that we need to go to the view retro process results screen. So we go to view, and then we need to go to Retropay status. So here you can just search for your employee and say go, and it should return the record. Yep. So you can see that it's returning that it's awaiting processing. So something has changed, and then now it's waiting to be processed. So once I run the Retropay Enhanced, it should be processed. Okay, so let's cancel this or just close this. So now we will run the Enhanced Retropay. Okay, I'm going to submit the request, single request, and again I'm going to just type in retro, and this is the concurrent program that I need to submit, Retropay Enhanced. Okay, I can leave it the effective date of today's date, so all the entries, the retro entries, are calculated and entered in the pay period such a way that December 3rd, 2013 falls in that period. Okay, so I will select the payroll and I can leave the entry creation date blank. So let's submit and we wait for this program to complete. Okay, so finally my program is complete, and now what I'm going to do is I will go into Sam's record and see what has happened. Okay, so I don't need to date track because I'm already on December 3rd. This is the right pay period, and I will just query Sam's record, go to his assignment and entries. Okay, so you can see that it has created all the retro entries. Now I can take a look at these one by one, and you can see that these are non-recurring entries. So the first one, I can see that the original date earned is 19th of October. Okay, so this is the first one. That's a change of $222. That's the extra amount that he's going to get paid. So the next one, if I click the next one, that's the 2nd November payroll. That's the next one. And go to the next one. This is the 16th November's run. And finally, this is the 30th November's run. Okay, so these are the different retro components that is getting generated. So now they're all in this pay cycle, okay, in this pay period. Okay, so now if I run a quick pay for the current pay period, I should see those entries coming in. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to change the date earned to December 14th. A regular run, save it, and let's start the run. So once this process is completed and once we see the SOE report, I want to bring another thing to your attention, and that we will discuss in the next some of the next tutorials. So let's see the SOE report, and then we will revisit the element entries one more time, and then we will talk about that. But let's first take a look at the SOE report to see that we now have two different components to store the current period salary and the retro amounts. Okay, so I go to the SOE report. Now you can see that, very simple. His new salary is 2444, which we made the change, so that part is correct. So this is his base salary now. So a calculation of 80 hours, he got paid for this amount. And we had 4 entries of $222. And you can see that this is the retro component. So we got 2 separate buckets. So one is the salary and the other one is the retro. So the salary amount is this, the retro amount is this. So now it is more neat. So when the employee sees their paycheck, the pay stub, they will know how much he has received retroactively. Okay, so that part, everything is good. So the Retropay Enhanced is working perfect. So before we end this video, I would just like to bring one thing to your attention, and that will be the topic of our next video. So notice something here. The salary was changed on October 14th. Okay, now if I look at the entries, let's take a look at the entries one more time. And let's actually date track to October 14th. So 14th October 2013. And as you can see that the salary has been entered from October 14th. Now, what is the pay cycle? What is the pay period for which this was done? Now, if I look at the payroll pay periods, the pay period for October 14th. So let's take a look at the quick pay one more time. So all the different quick pays that I have done. So this is my latest one. This is my, let's go to the one that is the October 19th. Okay, now this is the October 19th. So let's take a look at the statement of earnings once. And let me try to explain what the point I'm coming at. Okay, so here you go. Now notice something here. The period start date is October 6th and the period end date is October 19th. Okay, The salary change was done on October 14th. So the salary should have been prorated, but we saw that Sam received the full $222 for this particular pay period, which already had a payroll run. So that is not correct, right? I mean, the Retropay functionality is working fine because it's retroactively paying that employee. But what about the prorated calculation for that period? Now we can clearly see that if I give Sam an increase on the 14th, his increase for this particular pay period, just this one, this October 6th to October 19th, should have been a prorated amount of $222, because his $222 increase is for the full pay period, but for this pay period it was only for 5 days, from 14th until the 19th. So it was not prorated. So that change was not prorated. So that brings us to the next topic that we will start discussing, which is called proration, where we will discuss about what happens when there is a middle of the pay period pay change. So then the amount has to be prorated. So that setup we will discuss, and then we can rerun and we can see how the numbers are getting calculated correctly. So far as Enhanced Retropay functionality is concerned, it's working perfect. Had the change been made on October 6th, there would have been no issues because he would have been eligible for the full $222 increase for the entire pay period. But now, since we have made a change in the middle of the pay period, we can see that just the Retropay process is not prorating for the days that increased salary was effective. So we will talk about proration in some of the next videos, and that is something, again, a very crucial processing step, and it's very important that as a functional that you know how to set that up. So we will talk about it in the next video. But so far as Retropay is concerned, we are pretty much covered. We showed you the Retropay by element, and now we showed you the Enhanced Retropay. So if you get in your next project, in your next payroll project, you face a scenario where you have to do Retropay, talk to the client, see what is the best solution for the client, whether if it is simple enough to do the Retropay by element, or you have to stick to the Enhanced Retropay functionality. So hopefully that would help you. And if you have any questions, do please post it in our forum section, or also on the guest comments underneath the videos. So we will come up with more useful videos like this, and we really appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.